Were you guided here by kindly Miquella? I am Leda. And like you, I was guided by faith along his honorable path. Touch the withered arm, and you too will be transported to the realm of shadow where Miquella the Kind now dwells. My compatriots are there already. Like us, they have heard kindly Miquella's call. If you can find them, they are certain to lend you aid.
This video is brought to you by Opera GX, a free web browser that is tailor-made for us gamers. Opera GX is all about customizing your browsing experience to your liking. For one, using GX Control, you have full authority over the amount of RAM and CPU the browser uses up, allowing you to enhance your PC performance when gaming with your browser open. Unfortunately, that means you can no longer blame dying to Radahn on lag. Personally, this feature is useful to us when recording footage for our videos, as we've always got the script open in the background while playing. If you want to support our channel, please download Opera GX for free at operagx.gg/thebrotherscode, or click the link in the description box below. The great thing about Opera GX is that the switch over from your previous browser is as easy as having a bleed build in Elden Ring. Using the built-in import tool, you can quickly import settings from your previous browser to GX, like browsing history, bookmarks, and cookies. And you don't have to worry about losing your browser extensions either, as Opera GX is compatible with every Google Chrome extension. Now, onto my personal favourite thing, the mods. This is what truly gives Opera GX a unique edge. As you can see from the GX store, there are over 7,000 mods to choose from, all of which provide distinct wallpapers, background music, themes, and keyboard and browser sounds. You can even create your own mods. I personally alternate between Elden Ring, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, and Sekiro, as they're some of my favourite games. Just to remind you, Opera GX is completely free, so please give it a chance. Not only will you be directly supporting us, but once you try out its features, you'll never want to go back to a basic browser again. Download Opera GX by going to operagx.gg/thebrotherscode, or click the link in the description box below. The Land of Shadow, a place obscured by the Erdtree, where the goddess Marika first set foot, a land purged in an unsung battle, set ablaze by Messmer's flame. It was to this land that Miquella departed, divesting himself of his flesh, his strength, his lineage, of all things golden, and now Miquella awaits the return of his promised lord. The Hornsent once held great influence over these lands, beings who hailed from the Bellarat Tower and worshipped the Crucible, viewing it as sacred due to its evolutionary gifts which granted horns. In an age long past, before this land was enshrouded in shadow, the vitality of the Crucible flourished. Remains of this can be seen in the ancient ruins. The mighty horned warriors safeguarded the tower, their weighty blades and large stature made for an iron wall of defense. The Hornsent worship deities such as the divine beast Dancing Lion. Divine beasts are messengers of the heavens, and their rage mirrors the tumult of the skies, of which storms are the pinnacle. Chosen by their god, the Hornsent would don lion masks and adopt the mantle of divine beast warrior. Among these knights, only those who truly excelled at divine invocation became sculpted keepers, and were granted the honour of the lion dance. Torrent may also be a creature of Hornsent origin. Many ponder if Torrent hailed from the realm of shadows, and if they once served Miquella, though there is little weight to this theory. Spurred by their beliefs, the Hornsent attempted to create saints. Leaving the confines of their home, they discovered the Shaman village, the home of Marika and her people. In the eyes of the Hornsent, the shamans were the perfect specimen to create saints. It was believed the flesh of shamans was said to meld harmoniously with others. Though never stated, it is plausible that the shamans akin to Marika were of Numan origin. Their unique genetics may have granted them power greater than that of a normal human, making them the prime candidates for sainthood. As a result, the Haunted captured and tortured them at Bonny Village. Using a tooth whip, the shamans paid in flesh and blood, their skin flayed at the whipping hut. Greater potentates, wielding their colossal butcher cleavers, would dismember the people. After compiling the living shamans and fusing them with the dismembered frames of the deceased, they'd be forced into jars. Prayers were offered to them in the hopes that they would be reborn, one day as saints. This was the cycle of death and rebirth, perpetuated by zealots. The Haunted's ambitions of creating saints could be viewed as a failure. Instead of birthing divine entities, they instead formed twisted creatures which only evoke the image of Marika, not her divine powers. They were simply people who had suffered unspeakable acts, forced to live in the vilest of conditions. On the other hand, perhaps these experiments led to the creation of the Divine Gate. After having slaughtered innumerable shamans, the Haunted constructed the sacred door with their very flesh. Strangely, however, many of these corpses can be seen with horns sprouting from their skulls, suggesting they were once Haunted themselves, leaving the origin of the Divine Gate shrouded in mystery. After the massacre of her village, Marika swore to deliver divine retribution to avenge her people, electing to fight fire with fire. An act the Haunted viewed as betrayal, insinuating she may have once served them. Whether this allegiance was out of her own free will is unknown. Lamenting the loss of her people, she chose to become queen. In memory of those she had lost, Marika solemnly blessed her empty village with the kindness of gold without order. Marika bathed the village of her home in gold, knowing full well that there was no one to heal. Interestingly, she blessed the village in gold without order, suggesting order was only introduced with her union with the Greater Will. Before departing, Marika severed a golden braid from her head, leaving it as an offering. No wonder the statues of Marika depict her with a torn braid, as a part of it was left in her homeland. What was her prayer, her wish, her confession? There is no one left to answer, and Marika never returned home again. She may have prayed for the power to avenge her fallen people. To crush the Haunted, she would need power beyond comprehension. Marching to the White Tower, Marika knelt before the Divine Gate. As Miquella would go on to divest aspects of himself, so too did Marika. Perhaps she divested herself of her pride and honor, thus forming Radagon. Having been embraced by the Greater Will, Marika was blessed with devastating power. As a result, the Golden Lineage was born. Memories of home never faded. As such, Landh was constructed, evoking the image of her humble abode. Interestingly, the divine statues in the Realm of Shadow portray Marika with her arms embracing her people, whereas in the lands between, her arms are held aloft, akin to crucifixion. An apt display for how the people's views of Marika changed over time. From a deity who was once a savior to an enslaved puppet of the Greater Will. Many adopted the faith of the Golden Order. Battlefield priests fought bitterly to spread their gospel in the Realm of Shadow, even when there was no Erdtree to gaze upon. Hence they created the Iris of Grace. In the Realm of Shadow, this artifice was employed by the priests of the Erdtree to quell the fears of their flock to magnificent effect. The monolithic Shadow Tree towers over the lands. The Shadow Tree is the shadow of the Erdtree, born of dark notions that bear no sense of order, that twist and bend its stock, rendering it brittle. Its appearance is unique in comparison to the Erdtree. A second stalk winds tightly around the first, almost as if in a tender embrace. The golden hues of the tree are accompanied by shadow. The splinters of the Shadow Tree contain golden brilliance. It is said that when the Shadow Tree crumbles from its core, that it will scatter across the entire Realm of Shadow. Many of the Erdtree faithful collected the tree splinters and used them in prayer. In addition, it is believed that the Realm of Shadow is the geographical inverse of the lands between. If the lands are overlapped, the realm would stand at the very center, at the intersection of all divine towers. Some theorize the veils draped from the Shadow Tree spread across the dimensions and link with these holy landmarks. Additionally, a structure known as the Suppressing Pillar can be found at the gravesite plane. It reads as follows: all manners of death wash up here, only to be suppressed. Upon closer inspection, it is clear the pillar shares similarities to the etchings found in the runes of Ul, insinuating that Ul created this pillar, lending credence to the notion that the Realm of Shadow was once a part of the lands between.
Long ago, Queen Marika commanded Sir Mesmer to purge the Tower folk, a cleansing by fire.
From Marika came Mesmer the Impaler, a conjurer of serpent fire. Like his brethren, he too was cursed. A being known as the Base Serpent dwelled within him, eating away at his kindling, his source of fire. To contain this creature, Marika placed a golden seal upon him. A malevolent snake writhed within Mesmer, and so his very mother plucked out his eye and put in its place a seal of grace. Appearing identical to Marika's seal, the mark represents Mesmer's solemn duty and the fact that he was chosen by the gods. On his mother's wishes, Mesmer made himself a symbol of fear, undertaking the cleansing crusade she desired. Direct thy maledictions, thine ire, and thy grief towards me alone. Although ordered by Marika to enact this purge, Mesmer ensured he took the brunt of the blame, allowing Marika to retain her sacred image. The Impaler lived only to fulfill the whims of his mother. Mesmer despised his own fire. Time and time again, he hoped to rid himself of it, but ever did it burn. It is hypothesized Mesmer harbored disdain for his own flame, due to its ability to burn the Erdtree, a fear that gnawed at Marika's heart. Intriguingly, the Impaler's kindling mentions the following. Mesmer, much like his younger sister, bore a vision of fire. The sister mentioned here is most likely Melina. To add to this, the minor Erdtree incantation discovered in Marika's village is eerily similar to those used by Melina, once more reinforcing the theory that Melina was a possible child of Marika, one who also had the capability of burning the Erdtree. Constructing the Shadow Keep directly in front of the Shaman village, Mesmer veiled the entrance to his mother's home. Tree sentinels were also stationed to defend the area. Within the castle walls is a church district, library, and also a hospital. Inside the healing ward dwell the Jar victims of the Hornsent. Mesmer provided them a place of healing and comfort. They were his mother's people after all. Considering these factors, the Shadow Keep was not only a base of operations, but also a place of succor for those in need. Mesmer was close friends with Gaius, the wild boar rider, appointing him as the leader of his armies. R'hllana, the Twin Moon Knight, sister of Rennala, disavowed her birthright, choosing instead to stand at Mesmer's side. These allies would prove useful in the war to come. Many were rallied to Mesmer's cause. Before long, he had amassed a Legion of Fire. The symbol of Mesmer's army depicts a golden ring and the fire of his sacred seal, a reference to the ward placed upon his eye socket by Marika. The colossal Black Knights were the primary force of Mesmer's army, donning armor built from black metal and adorned with gold. Their weapons were blessed by Erdtree incantations and represented their iron conviction. These knights would never yield or doubt their purpose. Fire Knights devoted themselves to utilizing flame incantations, for they could not wield the fires of Mesmer directly. These warriors were the only ones who truly knew Mesmer and the pain that accompanied his serpent-like form. Each and every knight hailed from a renowned family of the Erdtree's upper echelons. Teachings of flame incantations were recorded by the knights in cookbooks, serving as a guide for those who joined their crusade. As for the foot soldiers, they were equipped with a ragged cloak over rusted mail. Gold was used for the Shadow Tree motif on their chest piece, a small consolation to those forced to wage war without grace or honor. The warriors who fought in the crusade set aside both honor and mercy to wantonly impale and scorch those deemed impure. Those who felt invigorated by each cry of death were the same men who were certain of the sanctity of the campaign. Perfumers, Knights of Raya Lucaria, and Omen Killers also joined the field, pledging their aid to Mesmer. Giant furnace golems were built and strategically placed throughout the realm. A visage was placed on their frames, a stone mask surrounded by cold horns, depicting the fell god of fire that haunts the sagas of the Hornsent. Adorned on the waist are the heads of fire giants, beings whose powers derive from the fell god. A clever tactic of the Golden Order, using the golems to embody the deity the Hornsent feared most. Nigh on indestructible, these walking constructs would set the lands ablaze. Held within its frame were the countless victims of the Purge, the expression of pain charred across their faces. Even the dragons were not immune to the golem's fire. Engulfed in flames, the legions torched the Hornsent without mercy, brandishing them with agony and fear. When the Impaler's army assailed the tower, the ritual of the Lion Dance was turned towards martial ends. The majority of divine beasts were gored and hung upon Mesmer's spears, then burned in his flame. Those who witnessed the deed likened it to a funeral pyre for the tower itself. Unrelenting, Mesmer and his forces scorched the lands black, incinerating not only the Hornsent, but their deities as well. Blurring the lines between vengeance and justice, the crusade brought inconceivable destruction. The Hornsent, who lost everything in the Great Fires, peered upon the corpse of their ancestor, normally an act of sanctity, and saw in its shadow a twisted deity. The clan had suffered such torment that the horrible thing was taken as an object of worship. They swore vengeance against the forces of Mesmer and the Erdtree.
Our lands were by thy kind set aflame, our tower by thy kind veiled in shadow. Thou camest, robbing us of all, spoiling all. Take vengeance upon Mesmer and his lot. They who betrayed us, aye, they who burned us.
After a time, the divine beast no longer listened to the earnest prayers of its worshippers. On Marika's orders, the entrance to the divine gate was shrouded in shadow, preventing others from attaining godhood. Only Mesmer's flame could nullify the seal. Despite their ardent desire for revenge, the Hornsent could never truly retaliate against Mesmer and his ilk. The son of Marika became a permanent presence in the realm, his mere existence quelling any uprising. And what became of Mesmer and his legions? What was the reward given to those who committed sins in the Queen's name? Marika's fear of Mesmer compelled her to secret away her child within the realm of shadow, hidden away, keeping company with the original sin under hatred that would not be confined. Original sin possibly refers to the purge he waged in Marika's name. The servants of Mesmer begged Marika to embrace her son, but their pleas were ignored. Much of history fell into myth. Owing to this, there is now little mention of Mesmer in the lands between, the only evidence of his existence being the Impaler catacombs. A pair of knights, Commander Andreas and his son Hugh, upon learning of the Legion's serpentine nature, opted to rebel. Their uprising was swiftly crushed, resulting in their imprisonment, something which Mesmer mourned. As for the Fire Knights, they were shunned and chased from their homes after pledging allegiance to Mesmer as their master. His soldiers were buried, hidden from the Shadow Tree's sight. What drove Marika to such lengths? Some surmise it was Marika's fear of the Impaler's flame. Mesmer, akin to Melina, was a wielder of fire. They could reduce the Erdtree to ashes. Additionally, the serpent within Mesmer slowly devoured him over time. She could not predict when it would consume Mesmer entirely, and eventually, the symbol of the snake came to be viewed as a traitor to the Erdtree. And lastly, Queen Marika wanted to bury the truth, erasing her name from the annals of history. Marika portrayed herself as a divine saint who had no hand in the decimation of the Hornsent. For Marika, it was all too easy to commit horrors through Mesmer. She could steer fate while the sins blackened Mesmer's soul. Mesmer committed these acts, not Marika. The Impaler shouldered the burden, while his mother solidified herself as a benevolent god. Though Mesmer never challenged Marika's decision, it is worth noting that the majority of her statues throughout the Shadowlands were beheaded. Was Mesmer displaying his true emotions, or was this orchestrated by the vengeful Hornsent? Moreover, the Impenetrable Thorns incantation proclaims the following: "Denounce their ways, do them harm, for they have abandoned us." Possible sentiments of Mesmer and his devotees, who were discarded. Found in the Shadowkeep throne room is a statue of Marika embracing a young Mesmer, a symbol of a son's love to his mother. Living in exile, the wistful Mesmer remained in the Shadowkeep, whereas instructed by Marika, he vowed to kill all stripped of the grace of gold. Inspired by the Hornsent, Marika created powerful warrior jars by placing the corpses of great champions within, all in service of the Golden Order, suggesting that Marika divested herself of many things in pursuit of godhood, such as love and empathy. Discarding elements of herself that make one human, she was left embittered, ruling with cruelty, and mercilessly crushing those who did not share her faith, even repeating the sadistic experiments of the Hornsent. Others suggest Marika was unable to divest herself of everything, thus her ascendancy was flawed. The suffering of her people was carved into her mind, wounds that would never heal. Marika remained shackled to the past. Her pursuit of vengeance led her to rule with an iron fist. Regardless, her soul was fractured. She would go on to birth the omens Morgott and Mogwin. Their horned form and link to the Crucible reminded her of the Hornsent. For the simple act of existing, they were imprisoned in the shunning grounds. They would have been revered by the Hornsent, but for Marika, they were a sign of ill fortune and a reminder of her deeds. The The Hornsent's ruthless persecution of the shamans truly changed the course of history. If only the Hornsent could foresee the wrath they would invoke, perhaps they would have opted for another path. Their sins would not only lead their kind to the brink of extinction, but also invite the powers of cosmic beings to the world itself. Similarly, the same can be said for Marika. Vowing revenge, she became a deity and founded the Golden Order. Eradicating the Hornsent, she would then go on to establish her golden lineage. Defending her order at all costs, she strove for permanence in an impermanent world. Over the course of time, many wars were waged in her name. In the end, Marika would learn that godhood was a prison. Her son was murdered, her relatives conspired to replace her, and eventually, in rebellion to the Greater Will, who had already abandoned the realm, Marika shattered the Elden Ring. The Realm of Shadow felt it too, and feared it as a sign of the Erdtree's wrath. Now Miquella has entered the Realm of Shadow, pursuing ascension as his mother once did. Will Miquella succeed where Marika could not? After all, little can be gained from repeating the mistakes of the past.
Long ago, we began as Stardust, born of a great rupture far across the skies. We too are children of the Greater Will. Ever young Miquella saw things for what they were. He knew that his bloodline was tainted, his roots mired in madness, a tragedy if ever there was one. That he would feel compelled to renounce everything when the blame lay squarely with the mother. Marika and the fingers that guided her were unsound from the start. Well, the truth lies deeper still. It is their mother who is damaged and unhinged.
In the abyssal depths below the Church of Manus Meta dwells the mother of all two fingers and finger creepers. She was in turn a magnificently gleaming daughter of the Greater Will, and the first shooting star to fall upon the lands between. Meta fell from the cosmos even before the Elden Beast, scarring the Realm of Shadow. Over time, these ashen craters came to be viewed as hallowed ground. The mother received signs from the Greater Will, from the beyond of the microcosm. Despite being broken and abandoned, she kept waiting for another message to come. Discarded by her creator, Meta gazed vacantly into the beyond, yearning for the return of the Greater Will. Her eyes remained fixed on the cosmos. Finger readers once conversed with the two fingers, envoys of the Greater Will. In truth, all fingers were flawed since their creation, starting with their mother Meta. The Greater Will had abandoned her long ago. Any messages provided by the fingers were mere fabrications. The notion that the fingers would never lie was a fallacy. In the beginning, Marika and the fingers may have communed with the Greater Will, but as time passed, the deity would eventually flee the realm, never to be seen again. Or more frighteningly, Marika may have never contacted the Greater Will, meaning the Golden Order was based on a lie. Alas, founded by the divine union of Marika and the supposed Greater Will, the Golden Order prospered under the Erdtree, ignorant of the truth that their god had abandoned them, and that their faith followed the whispers of Meta and the two fingers, who had long lost contact. Nonetheless, the fingers continued relaying messages for a time, until they too lay silent. Understanding this harsh truth, Count Ymir aspired to become the Mother of Fingers himself. Ymir declared the following: "I will be the true mother. My fingers will grant us redemption." Originally, he was a teacher of sorcery to R'hllana, a position he would leave due to his fascination with the fingers. For this reason, he abandoned his allegiance to the moon. His maternal staff was crafted to depict the Mother of Fingers, and yet, just like Meta, he would not receive any sign. Serving Ymir were Yolan and Anna, two sword hands of night. Anna herself was a puppet created by Rabbath, possessed by Count Ymir's doll. Yolan and Anna were born in a cold, dark jail, where they were raised, deprived of light, to be sword hands of night. Thus were they cultivated to become the most terrifying masters of their blades, though the burden of the deed left their hearts frail and pliant. In their eyes, Ymir was their guiding star on the black canvas of night. Akin to the Count, they viewed the stars as guidance. Indoctrinated by Ymir, they pledged themselves to his cause. Possibly, the Sword Hands of Night are related to the Night Maidens and Noxorgestresses of the Eternal Cities. They too were born in the dark and lived under a false night sky, loyalists who awaited the coming of the Age of Stars and their Lord of Night. Situated close to the church, a small graveyard can be found. A particular gravestone reads as follows: Yuri, beloved child, taken before his time. Oftentimes Ymir can be found kneeling before this grave. One of Ymir's aims was to resurrect his progeny. Perhaps the Count viewed the fingers akin to his child, and so opted to give them love and warmth, where Meta did not. Obsessed by them, Ymir strove to replace Meta and become their new guardian.
The fingers are but unripe children, victims in their own right. We all need a mother, do we not? A new mother, a true mother who will not give birth to further malady.
The mantle of Mother of Fingers would earn him their loyalty and affection. Ymir believed in the guidance of the stars, therefore it is plausible that his ultimate goal was to re-establish contact with the Greater Will. Ultimately, Ymir's ambition would be his undoing. Recorded within a cookbook are the writings of a student of the Finger Runes. His brush with the sublime all but shattered his mind. Perhaps Count Ymir's prolonged exposure to these celestial entities left his mind broken, and in the end, madness took hold. Conversely, he may have tried to kill the Tarnished as they were no longer of use, or maybe he understood they were guided by the Grace of Gold, the Two Fingers, and ultimately Marika, the flawed Golden Order. If they had learned of Ymir and his goal, they would have good reason to eliminate him. Due to this paranoia, Ymir turned against the Tarnished. Though his goals were far from nefarious, his attempt to shepherd the Fingers only led him to ruin. Yolan would also join him in death, remaining loyal until the bitter end. Fortunately for Yolan, her soul can be reunited with her sister. Divided in life, united in death, their spirits may now serve the Tarnished. As for Meta, if confronted she will retaliate, before swiftly departing to the cosmos, through a black hole. Who knows where Meta will journey? Will she drift among the stars, or will she return to the lands of the Tarnished? One can only wonder.
The conceits, the hypocrisy of the world built upon the Erdtree. The follies of men. Their bitter suffering. Is there no hope for redemption? The answer, sadly, is clear. There never was any hope. They were each of them defective, unhinged from the start. Marika herself, and the fingers that guided her. No matter our efforts, if the roots are rotten, then we have little recourse.
A thick forest sprawls at the depths of the ravine that is untouched even by sunlight, known as the Sanctum of Sage Midra, and is a region forbidden by the Hornsent. Something wicked stirs in the abyssal woods. Like stars in the night, the frenzied eyes of the creatures pierce the darkness. The arrival of the Lord of Frenzied Flame was close at hand. The Elder Inquisitor and his followers were dispatched by the Hornsent to eradicate this sinister presence and prevent any from entering the accursed land. In the darkest corner of the forest lies a manse, the decrepit home of Midra and his wife Nanaya. A line of beheaded corpses can be seen before the gates. The madness of frenzy had taken hold, causing them to lose their heads. Or perhaps they were heretics, hunted down by the Hornsent. Surrounding the manse are the Winter Lantern Flies, said to be heralds of the aging untouchable. Aged ones patrol the forests, agents of chaos. Inside the manor, the writings of Midra detail the following. I touched him, but only once. When he thrust his staff in my face, I brushed it aside. It was then that I touched him, the aging untouchable. Possibly, this was the catalyst that led the frenzied flame to dwell within Midra, waiting for him to ascend. Inside the manse, the servants of Midra were massacred by the Hornsent, and the manor was laid to waste. After death, the servants remained loyal to their master, questioning why he was continuously tortured. Nanaya, Lady of the Manor, dedicated herself to the Lord of Frenzied Flame, clinging to hope that one day it would manifest within Midra. Eventually, she would perish, clasping a torch in her hand, the spinal cord of one who had failed to become the Lord of Frenzy. In a distant land, in an age long past, was born a man who failed to become the Lord of Frenzied Flame, and all that remains of him is cradled gently by Nanaya. Mystuhree was not the first of her attempts to birth a lord. To add to this, in a painting found in the manor, Nanaya appears to be pregnant. We can only theorize, but it is possible that Nanaya, in her unwavering faith, subjected their child to torture in the name of chaos. A plausible theory is that the reviled Shabriri had possessed Nanaya, though there is little evidence to support this claim. We do know, however, that Shabriri once possessed Yura and potentially Hayeta, therefore the possibility is far from minuscule. The Lord of Frenzied Flame shall take their torment, despair, their affliction, every sin, every curse, all melted away. Yet Mystuhree, like others before him, was too weak to become a lord. Encouraged by Nanaya, Mystuhree underwent agonizing torture and confined himself to the manse, believing that suffering would create the ideal vessel for the Lord of Chaos. Nanaya orchestrated his torment. When the flame would manifest, his anguish would end. Emaciated and disfigured, Mystuhree's body is a symbol of the price he had paid. Impaled through his torso is the Great Sword of Damnation, a weapon of the Hornsent used to execute the condemned. Hornsents viewed the Flame of Frenzy as antithetical to their beliefs. To them, spirits were eternal, and yet the frenzied flame could melt them away. No wonder the Hornsents forbid the flame's use. This could also explain Torrent's refusal to traverse the Abyssal Woods, as he may be of Hornsent's origin. Had the Tarnished embraced the Flame of Frenzy, at the heart of the Erdtree, the fire would incinerate Torrent and his whistle. The steed's fear of frenzy is well founded. Likewise, a similar belief was held by the Golden Order, who viewed the Erdtree as eternal, yet feared the flame. Although enemies, the Hornsent and the Golden Order were united in their disdain for the Flame of Frenzy. Perhaps the Hornsent left the armament impaled within his flesh for a reason, understanding that its removal could lead to the arrival of the Lord of Chaos. Furthermore, his ribcage looks akin to the barbed staff spear, a weapon of the Elder Inquisitor. The golden barbs inflicted eternal agony upon him. Yet, Mystuhree held fast to Nanaya's entreaty. Endure. The word was a curse.
Enough. I have endured more than enough. I ask you forgive me, dearest Nanaya.
Driven to the brink, Mystuhree finally abandons his aspiration of lordship. His manse ransacked, his wife and child dead, and his body broken, he finally saw reason. Bereft of hope, he apologizes to Nanaya and removes the blade pierced through his skull. Regrettably, this would not result in his death. Nanaya was right to place her faith in Mystuhree. Through this act of ultimate sacrifice, the Flame of Frenzy appears at last. All who inherit the flame lose their head, something Mystuhree had now done by choice, a scorching flame granting Mystuhree's flesh strength anew. Set ablaze by the unrelenting flames of frenzy, the manse begins to crumble. Mystuhree no longer exists, he is but a force of chaos. Another, more compelling theory exists regarding the events that transpired at the manse, one that paints the residents of the manor as tragic victims. If the remains held in Nanaya's arms are that of their child, then they possibly came into contact with the aged ones outside the manor. During this, perhaps Mystuhree and Nanaya dedicated themselves to researching the frenzy, to avert the crisis and save their child. To do this, Mystuhree ventured outside the manse and made physical contact with an aged one, detailing this experiment within his diary. Once Nanaya learnt of this, she knew that the Lord of Chaos would manifest within him, as it did their child. As a consequence, she ordered him to undergo great suffering, to suppress the Lord's emergence. When the Horn Scent arrived and gored him with the great sword of damnation, she advised him to leave it embedded within his frame. By leaving the armament within, the Lord of Frenzy could never manifest. For a while, Mystuhree obeyed her and endured this process. By the time he was confronted, he attempted to retaliate. He also advised the Tarnished to stay away, a warning as he was on the verge of death. A harrowing fate for Mystuhree and his family, victims of circumstance. Having lost everything, Mystuhree held on for as long as he could, but the pain was simply unbearable. At least Mystuhree was given peace in the end. The Lord may manifest within anyone who undergoes great suffering. Eliminating Mystuhree is akin to extinguishing a candle. All it takes is a spark to ignite one's soul.
May chaos take the world. May chaos take the world.
The pain, a voice cries out from afar. A wounded soul lies in the dirt.
Baal! Vile Baal! Oh, terror incarnate! Mark my words! You too shall know fear!
A proclamation spoken in truth by Igon, the broken Drake warrior. Igon was but a poor scavenger of battlefields, who found honor through dragon communion. His words warn of a danger residing to the east, upon the jagged peak which thrusts upward into the clouds, a territory rife with powerful dragons. Upon the mountain's summit is Baal the Dread, whose roars cause the peak's molten fury to boil and churn, a terrible harbinger of destruction, whose challenge to the ancient Dragon Lord ended in grievous mutual injury.
In a time long past, Baal turned upon the Dragon Lord. The foul traitor assailed our master and inflicted a grievous wound, only to make a hasty retreat, becoming a sworn enemy of the brood. Since that day, Baal and his bloodline, the Drakes, have served as sacrifices for dragon communion.
The ancient dragons, who ruled before the prehistoric era of the Erdtree, would protect their lord as a wall of living rock. Yet the foul dragon besieged Plasudasax, and from that day, neither dragons would be whole again. Plasudasax lost several of its heads, one of which can be seen wedged into Baal's body, whilst the foul dragon gave a limb and one of its wings, scars that endure forevermore as a reminder of betrayal. Since then, Baal and his lineage have been targeted by Drake warriors, hunted for their hearts, which are presented to the Dragon Communion priestess. The priestess was once an ancient dragon herself, but sacrificed that form for feeble flesh to aid in the destruction of Baal the Dread. Once known as Ancient Dragon Florisax, the priestess seeks revenge for her lord Plasudasax by any means necessary. She assumed a human form to share dragon communion with the world, in the hopes that a warrior would wield the strength of dragons, and fell Baal the Dread. Interestingly, should the Tarnished present the priestess with a condensed somniferous elixir purported to be capable of putting even an ancient dragon to sleep, she will succumb to a deep slumber and awaken in ruin, believing to have committed a foul and lowly act, an act meant only for her lord, who to her knowledge is resting in a place beyond time. The priestess accepts her fall from grace, but refuses to surrender her honor. Although aware that the Tarnished is the cause of her failure, she does not harbor a grudge, but instead requests a favor to remedy their transgression.
One day, may you become a dragon whole, a lord of your own making. Lead me, and I will follow.
Without a lord to serve, the priestess requests she join the Tarnished in spirit, so that one day they may become her new lord. Many Drake warriors have come and gone, but not all earned the right to face the foul dragon. Formerly a Dragon Communion warrior, the ancient Dragon Man was once arbiter of those worthy to devour the dreaded one. For reasons unknown, he now dwells within the Dragon Pit, relinquished of his duties. Scaling the jagged peak, the Tarnished happens upon Igon for a second time. The fallen warrior once challenged the vile dragon Baal, only to be grievously injured and broken by fear. Witnessing our ascent, Igon's spirit burns with a fiery passion. An extinguished hope reignites as the Tarnished proves their capability as a Drake warrior. Igon requests the following.
Scale the jagged peak, face Baal the Dread, and when you do, summon my soul. My limbs are limbs no more. My heart is twice over filled with fear. But a Drake warrior I remain.
With the aid of the Tarnished, Igon may exact his revenge and evoke remnants of the days of yore. Observing Baal's sanctum, it bears a striking resemblance to Farum Azula, lending to the theory that the crumbling city was once part of the jagged peak. It is known that Farum Azula was hidden in the clouds to protect the Rune of Death, but perhaps Baal's attempt on Placidusax's life had a role to play. Holding true to their promise, the Tarnished invites the wrath of Igon to battle alongside them. The broken Drake warrior seeks retribution, entering the fray with his signature armament, a great bow fashioned from 2 dragon bones, bound with coarse rope, covered in gashes left by claws. His piercing harpoons crafted one by one in the midst of his agony, so that Baal the Dread himself would know fear.
Curse you, Baal! I hereby vow you will rue this day. Behold, a true Drake warrior, and I, Igon, your fears made flesh. Solid of scale you might be, foul dragon, but I will riddle with holes your rotten hide. With a hail of harpoons! With every last drop of my being!
In a war of attrition, the legend of Baal the Foul Traitor would at long last end. Even in death, the throbbing heart of Baal continues to resist its subjugation, never weakening. One day, the fire within will consume the very body and soul of its communion devourer. One day. Nonetheless, the great honour of the ancient Dragon Lord Placidusax is restored in blood. Let it be known from this day forth that the followers of the Dragon Lord do not forgive, nor do they forget. The priestess can rest with peace in her heart, knowing that her duty has been fulfilled, and her watch has come to an end.
Our dream, long yearned for, has come to pass. My lord was blessed with great insight. He saw in the insatiable hunger and fierce spirit of man the very things that would fell Baal, our wretched nemesis. Warrior, you soar with the strength of dragons.
Guided by faith, the followers of kindly Miquella trace his steps through the realm of shadow, devoted to uncovering his whereabouts and the reason for his departure from the lands between. Miquella's crosses are scattered across the vast landscape of the Shadow Realm. Each cross is a mark of where the demigod shed a part of himself. In his quest to free himself from the bindings of the Golden Order and usher in a new age of compassion, he left fragments of his essence dispersed throughout the land. Miquella's followers, along with the Tarnished, resort to these crosses for guidance. With every cross discovered, they are a step closer to uncovering the secrets of Miquella's journey. The followers are overseen by Needle Knight Leda, who was once a member of the Oathseekers, a legion of knights who set off on quests of discovery, hoping to find by themselves an oath of their own choosing to serve in perfect lifelong devotion. Fate would see to it that her devotion be to Miquella, Kindly Miquella fashioned us as his needles, to quell all, to ward away all. In time she became the last of the Needle Knights, yet her allegiance to Miquella does not falter. At the Three Paths Cross stands Redmane Freya, a knight who once fought alongside General Radahn. After witnessing Freya's valour as a gladiator in his youth, Radahn invited her to join the ranks of his most trusted warriors. It is said that a hideous scarlet wound was once hewn into the centre of her face. Later, Miquella gently put his lips to it, and the unfading scar became the compass that Freya would thereafter follow. Alongside Freya is Hornsent, another who treads the heels of Miquella. Aligned in purpose, he remains cordial, but rest assured he does not forgive Marika's invasion. The sight of Messmer's flame engulfing his people is eternally carved into memory, a nightmare that ties together the vow of the Revenger with the victim's grudges. His oath to Miquella prevents him from exacting revenge, therefore he patiently awaits his lord's return, and with it the delivery of justice. At the main gate cross reside Sir Ansbach and more, also guided by Miquella's call. Sir Ansbach was a former pureblood knight and servant of Lord Mohg. With his fighting days behind him, he dedicates himself to investigation, to discern tender Miquella's ultimate purpose. Ansbach gives the appearance of a quiet, wise man, but an old fear lurks beneath, together with the cold, unflinching discipline that once honed his blade. As for Moore, he was once a pest follower of Melania and her scarlet rot. Now he supports Miquella's followers, with useful items collected by his forager brood. Within Morth Ruins, another follower awaits, Dryleaf Dane. The mysterious figure is a member of the Dryleaf sect, a creed which rejects dependence on others in all matters of faith, seeking self-discipline and self-sufficiency above all else. Dane equips a hat worn low over the eyes, obscuring his vision. Meeting the gaze of another can overcome the senses, often leading to the downfall of those who walk the noble and solitary seeker's path. Dane is a practitioner of a martial art, which is revealed only to those of worthy valour and character. The Tarnished may test their prowess in an honourable bout, if they wish to do so. In search of Miquella, the Tarnished travels to Belurat Tower Settlement, home to the divine beast Dancing Lion. The beast once served the function of performing dance rituals during festivals, but since Messmer's army assailed the tower, it became a creature of war, defending the castle with its life. Defeating this adversary leads to a tower sealed by shadow. It is said that the Gate of Divinity lies in that tower, but is inaccessible until the shadow is dispersed. In the wake of this revelation, the Tarnished pursues an alternate path. Travelling east, we discover Castle Ensis. On its outskirts is Teolier, a Tarnished who, like us, entered the realm of shadow on the account of Miquella. Teolier harbours an obsession for concocting elixirs. There are some techniques of the perfuming arts that employ poison. Upon learning of this, Teolier threw himself into mastering those techniques, and he made them his own. His fascination does not stem from nihility, but from his eagerness to relive a moment in which he made contact with Saint Trina. Just once, Teolier was granted the sweet repose of velvety sleep. The remainder of his days would be spent attempting to recapture it. Moving ahead, we enter Castle Ensis, a fort belonging to R'hllana, Twin Moon Knight. She's the younger sister of Rennala, who gifted her lustrous black hair. In her childhood, R'hllana and her elder sister met her twin moons, overlapping as though nestled against one another, a foreshadowing of the siblings' future. R'hllana was instructed in the sorceress arts by Count Emir, who later abandoned his allegiance to the moon. Sooner or later, she would prove her devotion to the Golden Order through sole entry into ritual combat, a demonstration of fidelity to the Erdtree. Once a Carian princess, R'hllana disavowed her birthright and chose to stand at Messmer's side instead, knowing full well that not even the brilliance of the moon could grant him succor. Before long, she became known as the Sword of Messmer. She did not depart from the lands between alone, as many Carian knights left their homelands to serve R'hllana in the realm of shadow. By your leave, we will accompany you wherever your lunar vessel takes you. Engaging in combat, R'hllana ignites her twin blades. One burns with the flame of Mesmer, the other imbues with Carian sorcery. Here and here alone were moon and fire ever together. In an honest duel, R'hllana is put to rest. Progressing forward, the Tarnished approaches the Shadow Keep. Upon reaching the entrance, the sound of shattering is heard across the realm. Somewhere, a great rune has broken, and so too has a powerful charm. Miquella has discarded his great rune, and with it a charm that he had placed upon his followers, revealing that their fealty to his lordship was exacted through enchantment, not free will. Only now that the charm is broken, can one truly prove their allegiance to Miquella.
Did you feel it? Miquella the Kind's enchantment appears to have broken. But while my devotion to kindly Miquella remains unchanged, by my troth I am not so sure about the others.
Leda takes it upon herself to weed out those who don't deserve to be at Miquella's side. She questions the Hornsent's allegiance. On one hand, he trusts Miquella to bring salvation to his people, but with the enchantment lifted, his vengeful passions may once again surface. Unwilling to take the chance, Leda believes it wisest to eliminate Hornsent. If he were to point his blade at Mesmer or Queen Marika, perhaps it would not matter, but vengeance changes a man, and one day his blade may turn towards Miquella. After all, Miquella is a child of gold. Even if he discards every last drop of his being, his lineage will always remain. For now, Hornsent absconds his fate, departing from his station to the Shadowkeep to take revenge on Mesmer. Internal conflict arises between the followers, as the fog that shrouded their faculties had been lifted.
Once, in an attempt to free Lord Mohg from his enchantment, I challenged tender Miquella, only to have my own heart rather artfully stolen. I knew not how weak I was. I believed that with sufficient mastery, even an Empyrean would be within reach of my blade. I could not have been more mistaken. Miquella the Kind is a monster, pure and radiant. He wields love to shrive clean the hearts of men. There is nothing more terrifying.
A daunting accusation that fractures the reputation of the once lauded Miquella. Ansbach's statement also reveals that Mohg was under enchantment, serving Miquella by force. In an attempt to free his lord, Ansbach too became enchanted, leading to his current predicament. If his testimony rings true, Miquella may not be the saint people had envisioned. Returning to Freya, she remarks that she must venture forth on her own accord, to uncover a truth she had long yearned to know. Kindly Miquella spoke of a vow he once made with General Radahn, and it is here the vow shall be honoured. As a Redmane, Freya must know the nature of the vow. Her curiosity prompts her to act outside the confines of her guild. Worry not, however, as the guidance of Miquella remains etched into her very flesh. With that said, Freya and Ansbach relocate to the Shadowkeep. Here they may unearth the truth. As for Thiollier, the breaking of the charm brought him naught but solitude.
I'm feeling rather lost, haunted by memories of St. Trina, her visage, her scent, the lure of velvety sleep. Would kindly Miquella chasten me for falling for St. Trina, while knowing that she was the discarded half? The problem is, I simply cannot help it. I would sacrifice everything just to gaze upon her one last time.
Thiollier's statement confirms what had been speculated since the dawn of time, that the enigmatic St. Trina is the discarded half of Miquella. When St. Trina was abandoned, the faint light purple mists coalesced into an intoxicating deep purple cloud. Now she blossoms in the deep purple garden of the Stone Coffin Fissure, a place where Miquella divested a part of himself. I abandon here my love.
St. Trina's love for kind Miquella is boundless. She is, after all, his other half. Or perhaps her feelings go beyond even that. Even if she was left behind, I doubt her heart would waver.
In the service of St. Trina is the putrescent night. All tainted flesh eventually becomes putrescence, and this clump of it imbibed St. Trina's nectar, which granted it eternal rest, and so it was that putrescence became her night. Upon slaying this adversary, the Tarnished meets St. Trina in the flesh. Inside the Purple Garden, we find Teolia desperately attempting to hear St. Trina's voice through imbibing excess amounts of her nectar. Again and again, he would drift off in the sea of her poison, but to no avail. Although Teolia finds little success, the Tarnished makes their attempt, consuming her nectar over and over until finally she makes her voice heard.
Miquella, stop. Don't turn the poor thing into a god. Godhood would be Miquella's prison. A caged divinity is beyond saving. You must kill Miquella. Grant him forgiveness.
St. Trina foreshadows that godhood will not serve Miquella well, only imprison the deity. Only later will we understand the weight of her words. In passing on St. Trina's message, Teolia scoffs at what he believes to be a fabrication. In his mind, only he can doze off in the sea of St. Trina. The thought of the Tarnished hearing her voice, when he could not, is a mere insult. He warns, should the Tarnished utter these cruel lies to him again, there will be a price to pay. Attempting to reason with a man blinded by love only enrages his bitter soul, for how could he possibly accept that St. Trina chose the Tarnished over him? Fueled by rage, Teolia invades the Tarnished, forcing their hand in battle. Before long, his spirit form is repelled. Although the broken man still lives, it is said that death is love unrequited. If that holds true, then Teolia had tasted death 1,000 times. Only I am allowed to know of your velvety sleep, its sweetly gentle embrace. So please, smile for me, and only me. Heeding St. Trina's warning, the Tarnished is steadfast in finding Miquella's location. To do so, they must burn the sealing tree which shadows the Gate of Divinity. This can only be done with Mesmer's flame, and so the Tarnished sets their gaze to the Shadowkeep. Inside, Sir Ansbach unveils new knowledge.
After Lord Moke's slain at his dynastic palace, it appears his body has been absconded with and taken straight to kind Miquella.
As a former servant to Lord Moke, Sir Ansbach wishes to make amends in whatever meagre way possible. He ponders on what Miquella plans to do with Lord Moke's remains. The secret rite scroll reveals the truth. A lord will usher in a god's return, and the lord's soul will require a vessel.
As if using Lord Moke to gain entrance to the land of shadow were not enough, he plans to use his corpse as the vessel of his king consort. He has forsaken Lord Moke's soul. He desires only his empty shell.
Miquella's indifference to the degradation incurred upon Moke's corpse is rather telling of his character. Sir Ansbach urges the Tarnished to pass this information to Freya, who resides on the 7th floor of the keep. He may be too old to act hastily, but Freya possesses a youth he no longer has, and this knowledge will surely stoke the flames of valor within her.
As the Festival of War concluded, General Radahn's soul met an honourable end, but kindly Miquella wishes to revive it, which is fine by me. I know it would pain old Jeren, but war has always suited General Radahn best. Endless war to invigorate the soul.
With the information gathered, it is evident that Miquella wishes to utilise Moke's corpse as a vessel to revive General Radahn and make him his king consort. As the puzzle pieces together, Sir Ansbach and Freya take their sides. Freya chooses to remain loyal to Radahn, content in witnessing her lord's return regardless of the means. Conversely, Ansbach understood that keeping his oath to his old master was not an act of logic, nor would it bear any justice, but it was for these very reasons he was unable to let go.
I'm afraid Sir Ansbach will have to be next. He insists that he's nothing but a worn-down over-the-hill soldier, but in his day, he was the feared commander of the Pure Blood Knights. who cleaved open Miquella the Kind with his blood blade.
Over time, Landh grows paranoid over Miquella's safety. Her blade itches to strike at the slightest thought of her lord being harmed. With that said, she decides to invade Sir Ansbach. In the presence of the Tarnished, her attack is repelled for now. On the outskirts of the Shadowkeep, trotting through a field of golden harvest, is Commander Gaius, the man in charge of Mesmer's army. Gaius is of Albinoric descent. He and Mesmer were as elder brothers to the Lion, and both were cursed from birth. In spite of, or perhaps because of this very reason, Gaius was both Mesmer's friend and the leader of his men. Similar to Radahn, Gaius wields gravitational powers. Truth be told, he was the most senior disciple of the same Alabaster Lord who taught Radahn gravitational techniques. Gaius and Radahn were good rivals in their youth, and their mastery of sorcery was a product of friendly competition. His curse is paraplegia, and for that reason he always rides atop his boar, who he calls his other half. Ascending the keep, the Tarnished steps before Mesmer the Impaler. Upon shifting his eyes to the Tarnished, Mesmer condescendingly questions his mother's judgment, insulted that she would sanction one so bereft of light. Not only had Marika abandoned him in the realm of shadow, but now a Tarnished guided by her grace challenges him.
Those stripped of the grace of gold shall all meet death. In the embrace of Mesmer's flame.
Mesmer's fault is underestimating the strength of the Tarnished, and the fortitude garnered through slaying countless lords and gods. As the fight progresses, Mesmer realizes that as it currently stands, he is unable to defeat the Tarnished. In an act of desperation, he takes an extreme measure to ensure triumph.
I will not suffer. A lord devoid of light. No, mother, forgive me. Soon tarnished. Wilt thou be taken in the jaws of the abyssal serpent shorn of light?
Mesmer seeks forgiveness, for he was compelled to destroy the grace granted by his mother Marika, the golden seal in his eye. In doing so, he unleashes the base serpent. Even at the height of his faculty, Mesmer is no match for the Tarnished.
Mother, Marika, a curse upon thee.
Although loyal to his mother until his last breath, Mesmer displays a sliver of contempt, cursing Marika for abandoning him, a bittersweet end to the legend of Mesmer the Impaler. In the wake of the battle, Hornsent appears within Mesmer's chamber.
What cruelty is this? Who would rob me of my one vital purpose? Am I so feeble, witless? dull of blade. O mother, O most cherished wife and child, it seems vengeance was not mine to enact. Where now should I point my tired blade?
Stripped of his one purpose, Hornsent finds himself absent of direction, a man who lost himself to the cause. His whole existence had led up to this moment, only to have it taken away in an instance. Without a purpose, life is motion without meaning, activity without direction, and events without reason. Alternatively, if the Tarnished had summoned Hornsent to fight Mesmer, he will show gratitude for the opportunity granted. But the cascading sheets of blood do not end here. The thirst for revenge remains unquenched. In the words of Hornsent, vengeance will be exacted from Marika, her offspring, and all the Erdtree's denizens. Left unchecked, the perpetual cycle of violence may spell doom for all. Having acquired the flame of Mesmer, the Tarnished can set ablaze the sealing tree located in the ancient ruins. These giant ruins are flooded, overgrown, and split into two by a chasm. To the southwest is the Church of the Bud, overlooking the Tower of Shadow. The church was burned to the ground by Mesmer during his purge. It is then that Romina discovered a twisted divine element, which she weaved into the baleful Scarlet Rot. Bereft of a master, the Scarlet Butterflies were soothed by Romina, who reached out to them. In the scorched remains of the church, Romina held the bud in speechless silence. That bud would become her blade. The Saint of the Bud stands between the Tarnished and the sealing tree, and on this account she's slain. Approaching the final leg of the journey, one thing remains: to burn the sealing tree and march on to the Gate of Divinity. Only there may we find that which holds all things true, the truth of Miquella's nature, the truth of his intent, his fate. Entering the land of the Tower, the world bears witness to the final showdown between the Tarnished and Needle Knight Leda. Concluding that the Tarnished aims to slay Miquella, Leda summons the followers as a final line of defense.
Don't you dare approach Miquella the Kind. Needle Knight Leda, Dryleaf Dane, and our allies will never allow this.
The Tarnished does not tread alone. By their side is Teolia and Sir Ansbach. Although beyond his prime, Ansbach's vigour remains ever strong, driven by his desire to restore the dignity of his Lord Mohg. Initially, Saint Trina's words left Teolia in denial, but with time comes acceptance. Teolia, for the first time, walks with clear purpose, to grant Saint Trina's one and only wish.
I am the Red Mane Freya. The time has come. I could not hope for a worthier foe. This is our moment. Let's make it something to remember.
Righteous Tarnished, it appears that our interests have aligned. A balm upon my soul it is that we do not meet today as enemies. Now, my blade. Watch closely. Lady Leda, your suspicions were dead on. In the end, I could not bury the memories of Lord Mohg and our pact of blood.
I can't fathom your convictions. After knowing kindly Miquella, what remains to pledge to your Lord of Blood?
I am here only to grant St. Trina's singular wish. I will stop Miquella the Kind. He will never become a god. Not the finest blade, nor the mightiest armor will spare your life from the poison of Teolia.
Teolia, I seem to have made a poor judgment about you, or perhaps St. Trina. By way of apology, I will reveal the marrow of my sword, its needles that will stitch you into death.
Haha! How readily the sensation returns. The runaway spirit of war.
Samor, I do not wish to fight you, but I have new purpose I must see through.
You and I, fighting, and tragedy this is.
Kind
You were fine. In your part, truly a glorious battle. It was.
Sad. Forever.
Kindly Miquella, make the world a gentler place.
In the end, Needle Knight Ledda and the followers of Miquella are put to rest. Journeying to the peak of the tower, the Tarnished arrives at the Gate of Divinity. The surroundings are adorned with the flesh of countless bodies, potentially ones amassed by Mohg as sacrifices for Miquella's ascendancy. Awaiting on the opposite side is the champion of the festival, General Radahn. Out of sight, the voice of Miquella echoes through the arena.
Now, the vow will be honored, and my lord brother's soul will return, so that he may be my consort.
Miquella sought to accept all that was and would be, but found one that refused to be embraced. No wonder, as one god and one king consort is all the world needs. The Tarnished cannot in good conscience stand aside and let Miquella rule as the new god of the coming age, and so a clash begins. Radahn wields his notorious greatswords, decorated with a line main motif. These were in his possession immediately before his triumph over the stars, the swords of a lord who does not rely on physical strength and gravity alone. Radahn's armour is merged with horns. In addition, he wields blood magic, an expression of his fusion with Mohg. As the conflict endures, Miquella appears from within the Gate of Divinity, now a god.
Aspiring lord of the old order, if you have known sin, if you grieve for this world, then yield the path forward to us.
He embraces his promised consort as he joins him in battle. Now at the height of his potential, in addition to the aid of Miquella, Radahn is almost unconquerable, but the Tarnished is more than familiar with overcoming unfavourable odds. They had fought and slain General Radahn once before, conquered Melania Blade of Miquella, and charged headfirst towards the vassal beast of the Greater Will and the living incarnation of the concept of order. Not once has defeat discouraged their hearts. The Tarnished simply fights for their cause. Fate takes care of the rest. In one fell swoop, both Radahn and Miquella are slain. Saint Trina's life withered and fell, as fleeting as the seasons. At her last, she left a single water lily. Despite the velvety purple hue, the flower is in no way poisonous, it merely blooms in quietude. She can rest easy, knowing that Miquella had been freed from himself. Observing Miquella's memory, we witness him kneeling on the ground with his hands clasped together, pleading with Radahn.
Lord brother, I'm going to be a god. If we honor our part of the vow, promise me you'll be my consort.
This is the same vow mentioned earlier by Freya, an agreement between Miquella and Radahn that should Miquella grant him a great war, Radahn will in turn serve as his consort. With the context provided, a complete picture can be painted. Miquella set off for the tower enshrouded by shadow, abandoned everything, his golden flesh, his blinding strength, even his fate, all in an effort to bury the original sin, to embrace the whole of it, and be reborn as a new god. It is suggested that the original sin is Messmer's purge of the horn scent, ordered by Queen Marika. Witnessing the decline of the Golden Order and the oppression of the Outer Gods, Miquella hoped to usher in a new age of peace and compassion. To do so, he needed to divest himself of all that is gold, his flesh, strength, and even his fate. Only then could he be reborn anew and ascend to godhood. A god needs a consort, and who better than the mightiest warrior in the entire realm? A man collectively respected and admired by all for his fearsome bravery and honourable inclination. In their childhood, Miquella saw in Radahn a lord, his strength and his kindness that stood in stark contrast with their afflicted selves, and so Miquella made his heartfelt wish that Radahn would one day be his king consort. Radahn is known as the Lord of the Battlefield's Lion. He proudly wields that title with honour. The Hornsent worship deities such as the divine beast Dancing Lion, viewing the creature as a messenger of the heavens. With Radahn as consort, the Hornsent and the Golden Order may finally be united through shared belief, existing under one God, one faith. Miquella brought forth his proposal to Radahn. The lion agreed, but under one condition: he be granted a great war to invigorate his soul. It is here that Miquella's memory occurs, and the vow is made. Obliging, Miquella dispatched his blade Melania. This led to the infamous Battle of Ionia, where Radahn and Melania fought to a stalemate. When Melania, blade of Miquella, let the rot flower blossom in Ionia, Radahn heard a murmur in his ear: "Miquella awaits thee, O promised consort." The rest is history. Many moons later, Starscourge Radahn would be felled by a nameless Tarnished. Miquella pursued a means to resurrect his promised consort, but first he needed to become a god, and so Miquella placed an enchantment on Mohg, causing him to be infatuated with the demigod. By Miquella's orders, Mohg carved his infant form from the Erdtree and took him to his palace. As Miquella hibernated within his cocoon, Mohg ordered his followers to render offerings of blood, drenching his chambers in order to facilitate Miquella's rebirth and ascension to godhood. Slake his cocoon's thirst, his awakening shall herald the dawn of our dynasty. The somber revelation that Mohg was forced to partake in Miquella's affairs through an enchantment, rather than by choice, shines a light on the injustice imposed upon his legacy. He was once referred to as Luminary, a person who inspires others. This was likely a reflection of his character, which would later be tainted by Miquella, granting him the moniker Lord of Blood. Even those he influenced would be affected by Miquella's machinations, whereas he once garnered the admiration of respectable individuals such as Sir Ansbach. His fanatical shift to bloodletting would attract zealots such as White Mask Vare. Following his death, Mohg's corpse would be taken to the Realm of Shadow for Miquella to utilize as a vessel for the soul of Radahn. Before our eyes, we witness Miquella's ascension to a divine plane, where all gods and dead souls gather, and Radahn breathing new life as his new consort. Those who saw the decline of the Erdtree and the fallen leaves long ago braced themselves for the weakening of order and embraced a strict faith, and then they made to serve a new god. The new god would be Miquella. Upon his return in divine aspect, Miquella adorned a circlet of light atop his head. Whereas the Elden Ring was the basis of Marika's rule, this circlet was to be the very foundation upon which Miquella's Age of Compassion would be built, should it have ever come to pass. Miquella's journey began with pure intent, one built on compassion. Similar to Ranni, he grew tired of the ruling of Marika and the Outer Gods, shaping the world as they pleased while unleashing chaos in their wake, apathetic to the suffering of mere mortals. Whereas Ranni aimed to rid the world of the gods and allow natural order to take course, Miquella sought to wrestle fate itself and take control of destiny. The common people needed a voice, to be heard, to be seen. Miquella was that voice. His reign would have been in service of the powerless, for he was once as such, cursed with eternal childhood. Miquella created the Erdtree as a safe haven for the meek, and he promised to create a world for those same beings. He was even willing to bring the Tarnished along with him.
I promise you, 1,000-year voyage guided by compassion. Lord of the Old Order, let us go together.
Miquella's vision for a utopian society was flawed from its very inception, a self-imploding paradox destined to fail. His idea of harmony was to bewitch the world to love him and each other, as he did to his followers. This can be seen within the Stone Coffin Fissure, where a heap of animals stand beside one another, displacing the circle of life and nature itself. This forced unification would have only led to an age of stagnation, an artificial union of compassion absent of free will. For humanity, to think freely is to create, innovate and reform. Without that, those under Miquella's kingship would have been no more than prisoners, and thus the cycle repeats itself. Miquella's tragedy parallels that of Marika's. one that began with a compelling necessity to usher in reformation. Whereas Marika was spurred by revenge, Miquella desired unity. However, the price of attaining godhood was severely misjudged. To abandon your flesh, limbs, eyes, heart, love, fears, doubts and vacillations means to abandon your humanity. Miquella's ambitions were born of humility, but he lost himself in the process, both metaphorically and physically. His greatest mistake was abandoning Saint Trina, the part of him that was his love, his compassion. Without those core qualities, he was no better than the outer gods, no better than Marika. Saint Trina foresaw this outcome and warned that godhood would be Miquella's prison. Throughout his journey, he caused the Battle of Ionia, formed his followers through a charm which infringed on their free will, in addition to corrupting Luminary Mo and defiling his corpse. Pure and radiant, he wielded love to shrive clean the hearts of men, all in the name of peace. But at what point did the ends no longer justify the means? It is said that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Never has it been more true than now.
Kindly Miquella spoke of the vow he once made with General Radahn, and it is here the vow shall be honoured.
Miquella has said as much himself. He wishes now to throw it all away. The act will sear clean the Erdtree's wanton sin. The Erdtree is my people's enemy, by Marika long betrayed, set aflame.
Take vengeance upon Mesmer and his lot.
Mesmer! Foe of my beloved people! In vengeance for the flames, my blade I wield!
My clan's suffering, their pain, all that they felt. Do you understand now?
Miquella the Kind is a monster. Challenging a god is no small matter.
I can see it in your eyes. You are a fighter, are you not?
Become our new lord. A lord not for gods, but for men.
Once again, a huge thank you to Opera GX for sponsoring this video. Please download Opera GX for free at operagx.gg/thebrotherscode, or click the link in the description box below. To our Patreons, thank you for going above and beyond in supporting our content. We really appreciate you. And to everyone who watches our videos, likes, comments or subscribes, it's because of you that we get to express our creativity and do what we love. Thank you. Now that the Elden Ring saga has come to an end, let us know in the comments below what you want to see next. We'll see you guys soon.